Asyle, the engineer, and the island. Week 43, Day 1. Well, what do you know? Another nice day. Or perhaps I should say another clear day. I did my morning chores and got the new record plates cooking before deciding to make this another paper day, gathering up plant material, soaking it, pressing it, and spinning some of it into fibers. I stopped for lunch halfway through the day, unloaded the record plates, and swapped them out for more lime before continuing to make paper and thread. At the end of the day, I remembered the electrolysis tub, so I removed the iron plates from it, reloaded it with pyrite, and chiseled the rough edges off the plates to make them the proper shape for transformer cores. In this case, I decided to basically reuse the shape of the motor stators and make toroidal transformers, mostly because the circular shape used less material than a square one. Once I was done, I cleaned up for the day and got ready for bed. Week 43, Day 2. It was raining again, so I made this another mining day. While there was still plenty of ore to be had, part of the problem I started to find was that it wasn't strictly copper ore. There were a lot of other metals mixed in, which made it hard to pick the right veins to make most of my blasts. At the end of the day, I loaded my ore into the grinder and got ready for bed, my arms sore from all the drilling. I'll have to rely on the centrifuge to separate the mixed metals as much as possible for me. Week 43, Day 3. Still raining pretty steadily, which is frankly welcome over the sudden, intense storms. Maybe the season has finally calmed down a bit. What wasn't welcome, though, was that I didn't have a lot to do, so I defaulted back to working on the chapel interior. My indigo plants had grown in a bit, so I harvested a few leaves in the rain and boiled them down in the kitchen to make more blue dye to finish off the mural on the chapel ceiling. While I was at it, I didn't want to waste the heat from the firewood, so I also melted down some resin for coating my extra records. After that, I spent a few hours finishing the painting, and then stopped for lunch. It was still raining, though not quite as badly as this morning, so I got some stones and clay in the rain, and started making some pews to really finish off the chapel. More like 2 cedar benches, really. I could have made them out of bamboo, I suppose, but making them out of clay that seemed to grow out of the walls looked more appropriate for the style of this building. I made 6 benches in total, which I know is silly because there's never going to be that many people here, but it still somehow makes me feel a little less lonely. When I was done, I sat down and played some of the worship songs I could remember on the ocarina before getting ready for bed. Week 43, Day 4. It was kind of overcast today, so I went out and did my morning chores, but once again found myself at a bit of a loss for something to do. I looked around at what I had to work with and noticed that I was basically full up on latex again, so I remembered that I needed to replace the mattress for the panic room, which I had put in the underwater dome, so I whipped up most of the latex into foam in the workshop and poured it into a new mattress mold, as the old one had become a puddle of standing water out in the rain. I took an early lunch after that, and decided to use my remaining latex and hours in the day making pipes for the Vortex drill, as I'd stockpiled a lot of bamboo over the last few days for this purpose. Might as well have them ready and prepare for this project as though it's actually going to work. It was mostly just drilling and sealing, but it was still monotonous. It gave me time to think. Mostly about stuff that I probably shouldn't have been thinking about. But it also caused me to recognize a potential problem with the Vortex drill as I've designed it so far, namely that it's probably going to veer off to the side and twist all around as it digs through the earth. I want it to go straight down. This is a major problem with even existing oil drilling systems, and as my mind started to wander onto this problem, I found myself more enthused again as I started coming up with a solution. The way the Vortex drill works is that water flows down the hole under pressure, the walls of the hole itself acting as a pipe, which saves me the trouble of having to make a broad pipe or hose, and into the outer sleeve of the nozzle, which twists the water flow to circulate around the axis of the hole ahead of the nozzle, narrowing the flow so that the water moves faster, causing it to rub up against the edge of the hole, tearing it up from cavitation, and sucking the water and stone particle slurry back up the center of the nozzle, where the actual pipe I'm making will carry it back to the surface so the water can be recycled and the sand can be removed. Because there are several channels on the outer sleeve of the nozzle, however, I can put a small valve on each of them to restrict water flow. The side that the water flows more slowly on will be eroded less, causing the nozzle to start veering in that direction. By simply weighting these valves so that they open and close as the nozzle tips, the whole system can be made self-correcting. I decided to work on this at the end of the day, when I had the design more or less nailed down in my head. It was small and fiddly, but after a while, I got it figured out, and I think the solution is quite elegant. It basically consists of a ring that slides back and forth within a tube connected to the back of the Vortex drill bit. Normally, the flow of water through this ring, combined with its shape, causes it to remain centered, or to oscillate about the center of the tube evenly. But if the drill head isn't pointing straight down, because the ring is made from buoyant wood, it'll float to the high side, allowing more water to flow that direction, while covering up the low side. Once again, the result should be that the drill automatically corrects for digging straight down. I went to bed rather pleased with myself on that one. Week 43, Day 5. It was a sunny day today, so after my morning chores, I decided to take some of the lead ore that had been mixed in with my copper over the past few weeks and build an extra battery, as I was frankly getting tired of waiting for everything I needed to make the Vortex drill work, in addition to replacing the electrodes I removed for making glass panes a few months ago. I figured I could run the drill on batteries, even if I had to swap them out once a day for recharging, and at least do some bug fixing with the design while I waited for more chemicals to build up for making explosives. Then, once I get the transformers and everything set up, I can adjust the motor and generator for AC. So once I was done foraging, I fired up the solar kiln and smelted my lead. I bubbled it to get out the silver, not that there was very much to be had in these particular veins. I then reheated and dipped my lead to make my battery electrodes before assembling my battery, sealing it, and leaving it to charge for the day. I then stopped for lunch and looked for something else to do, besides keeping the kiln topped off with lime to take advantage of the sun while it was shining. I ended up just hollowing out more bamboo pipe for the Vortex drill until the end of the day. Week 43, Day 6. Rain's back, though again, it was thankfully not a big storm. In the morning, after breakfast, I went to the workshop and did the rounds with the electrolysis cell, removing the plates, reloading the ore, and chiseling and assembling the plates. I now have one of the transformer cores I needed for the power grid, but no copper to coil onto it. After that, though, I found myself once again at a loss for something to do. Then I remembered the agar plates I made a while back, and decided to see if I could do some microbiological studies today. Assuming I stored them properly, they should still be sterile. This is another field of science that's kind of outside my areas of expertise, but one that nonetheless fascinates me. I've always had ideas for trying to use microbes for all sorts of functions, from chemical manufacturing to basically acting as programmable nanobots. And while conditions here are still pretty primitive, maybe I could do some experiments to see how close I can get. I don't know much, but I do remember a few basics on microbe culturing techniques from a microbial fuel cell project I was planning a long time ago. I took a sample of muddy water from a nearby puddle, knowing it was going to have a whole zoo of microorganisms in it. I then took that sample and diluted it by a factor of 10 with distilled water, before diluting it again and again several times over. This trick allows you to separate a single species of microbe from a huge mixed sample, and I thought it was pretty clever when I first learned about it. I then poured my diluted samples into different petri dishes and put them in a pot with a lid, which I cleaned out with ethanol and set inside my ethanol brewing pot to gently warm it at the same temperature as the microbes digesting the rotten fruit. That kept me busy for a couple of hours, but I was still at a loss for what to do afterwards. I had a look around again and remembered the records I made a few days ago. So I went to the chapel, tuned up the music machine, and spent a little time getting the tunes I'd made so far recorded. Maybe it's just because these records are new, but I was expecting a muffled or grainy sound quality to them. However, when played back, they sounded pretty good. I stopped for lunch at that point, and I was again out of ideas for things to do. This is going to keep happening, unfortunately, so I think it's important that I come up with a few additional plans for things to keep me busy when I have nothing else to do. It crossed my mind, though, that maybe I shouldn't be focusing solely on things that'll help me survive and build. After all this time just running around as fast as I possibly can, building as much as I possibly can, maybe it's okay to finally slow down and take a break. Time to make something that's just for me. Just something to make me happy and keep me occupied. Back home, I'd probably be watching YouTube or playing computer games in my downtime. I can't do either of those things here, at least right now, but it occurred to me that there may be a way to make an analog of some of my favorite games in a simpler form. After all, a computer is basically just crunching a bunch of numbers, and I can do that myself if I need to. D&D is a testament to that, and I've seen some computer games that have had board games made in their likeness, so maybe I could do something similar to keep myself a bit entertained. One of the factors that I think will keep such games interesting is using random number generation to decide events or outcomes, again like D&D. But I'm not sure if I could make perfectly shaped and balanced dice to keep conditions truly random. I decided to give it a try anyway, getting a bit of clay and trying to shape it into a perfect little cube, using a piece of wood that I carefully measured and whittled out as a consistent reference for each face. I made several of these dice so I could pick the ones with the most random distribution of outcomes for use in my games. I left the die to dry overnight, and then used some of my paper to make a bunch of blank playing cards. What I put on them will depend on the game I want to play, and I don't find typical card games like Bridge or Uno particularly interesting, even when I have other people to play with. Solitaire is basically just a waste of time. The irony, though, is that a lot of the games I've enjoyed playing in the past have been in the survival, base building, or farming sim genres, and I think I can forgive myself for being a bit tired of that by now. I couldn't really do puzzle platformers with this equipment either, which kind of just leaves RPGs, which were themselves mostly inspired by tabletop RPGs like D&D. Full circle. I didn't play a lot of RPG games at home though, but one I do remember enjoying was Pokemon, which also has a card game, so I figured that it might be a fun thing to try to recreate. I used some pieces of paper to draw maps of the different regions, as best as I could remember from playing Pokemon Red, and drew as many of the Pokemon as I could remember on my cards, mostly Gen 1, separating them into different stacks based on what environments they were likely to be found in, and making duplicate cards for the Pokemon that always seemed to be more prevalent than the others. Darn Zubats. Coming up with all these systems was starting to get fun, and I even came up with a few of my own to make this board game more interesting. I thought it would be fun with multiple players too, though that hit me with another twinge of loneliness. However, before I knew it, the sun was going down, and my game was far from finished, but that'll at least give me something fun to do and play when I get up for Sabbath tomorrow. Week 43, Day 7. Once again, another perfectly clear day on a Sabbath when I wasn't supposed to be working outside. I guess it's neither here nor there whether it's raining or not, given the projects I've been working on lately. No choice but to wait anyway. At least it was good weather for cooking my game dice. I spent the morning foraging while the weather was good, and transcribing my radio recordings and listening to the sermon when I got back. I've started putting notes in the margins of my Bible passages based on interesting things I hear from the sermon in relation to those passages. After that, I went down to the dome, tended the garden, and fed the sharks before coming back to the base for lunch. I checked on my bacterial cultures after lunch, though I must admit my attentions were a bit divided. Now I had too much that I wanted to do. Some of the cultures had grown, and some hadn't, which I suppose was to be expected. I must have diluted the solution so much that some of the petri-dishes started with only one microbe in them, while others had none. The ones that did have microbes growing in them hadn't grown very large cultures yet, though, so I decided to leave them alone for another day and get back to making my game. Specifically, I worked on finishing my dice, grinding them down on the grindstone wherever they seemed a little misshapen, painting numbers on them, and rolling each one several times to see if they had any preference for a particular number, and making adjustments again. After that, it was back to drawing cards and maps and making rules for the game, which was fun, but I still didn't manage to finish before the end of the day. I was thinking about singing the Pokemon theme song with a reference to bloopers in it, but I thought that would be too cringy, so here you go. There was still plenty of ore to be had. There was still plenty of ore to be had. Okay. It was mostly just splitting and sealing until I realized I already made this adjustment much earlier. Pause for edits. The way the vortex, whatever that is, the side that the water flows more slowly on will be eroded less, causing the nozzle to start veering in the opposite direction. Causing the nozzle to start veering in that direction. There's a typo for you. Once again, the result is that the drill should automatically correct itself to Darn Zubats. And at least do some bug fixing with the design while I waited for more explosives while I waited for more chemicals for explosive. So many things I need to correct here. After all, a computer is one of the factors that I'll need. You're getting ahead of yourself. Read the text, don't guess it. One of the factors that I think I'll need. One of the factors that I think will keep such games interesting. Okay. I didn't play a lot of RPG games at home, though, but one I do remember enjoying was Pokemon, which also has a card game, so I figured that it might be a fun thing to try to recreate. Copyright strikes be darned. Hey there, thanks for listening all the way to the end. I hope your week has been as short and chill as mine so far. I should have everything ready by next week, though, to finally start building the geothermal drill. So, if you want to see how that turns out, you can press the subscribe and bell buttons to get notified as soon as the next episode is ready. Now, although I'm not trying to make money with these videos, it would really help me out, more than anything else, if you could share this video with someone who you think would enjoy it, so that maybe someday I can find someone to play my Pokemon board game with after all. On that note, if you want to talk about some of your own stories or perspectives on the episode, maybe some neat things you've learned about microbiology or experiments you've done, or even if you just want to share your favorite Pokemon, feel free to share them in the comments section below. I genuinely love to hear them, and I'm always open to suggestions and corrections. That said, thanks again for listening, and hope to see you here again next week.